Picture this, it's 1946, post-war Tokyo. A small company sets up shop in a bombed-out department store attempting to make rice cookers. They fail spectacularly, burning rice more often than cooking it. Fast forward to today, and that same company dominates the gaming world with PlayStation, selling over 500 million consoles globally. This is the story of Sony, one of the most remarkable business transformations in history. In 1946, Sony was founded with just 20 employees and $500, their first product. An electric rice cooker made from aluminum electrodes, it was a disaster. The cookers either undercooked or burned the rice. But failure taught them something crucial. Innovation requires iteration. Their breakthrough came with a tape recorder in 1950, Japan's first. Nobody knew what it was for, so Sony's salespeople had to create the market themselves, selling to schools and courts. This pattern would define Sony forever: create the future, then convince people they need it. In 1952, Sony discovered the transistor, a tiny invention that would change everything. They acquired the licensing rights for just $25,000. American companies saw transistors as tools for hearing aids. Sony saw them as the future of electronics. In 1955, Sony launched the TR-55, Japan's first transistor radio. Then came the breakthrough, the TR-63 in 1957, marketed as pocket-sized. Here's the genius part: it didn't quite fit in a standard shirt pocket. So Sony made their salespeople wear custom shirts with slightly larger pockets. Pure marketing brilliance, the transistor radio exploded globally. By 1959, Sony was selling 100,000 units monthly. They were no longer a struggling Japanese company, they were becoming a global brand. In 1975, Sony introduced Betamax, the first home video recording system, technically superior to everything else on the market. Then JVC launched VHS. It was bulkier, lower quality, but had longer recording times and was cheaper to manufacture. Sony made a critical mistake. They kept Betamax proprietary while JVC licensed VHS to everyone. More manufacturers meant more movies, more marketing, more momentum. By 1988, Betamax was dead. Sony had lost the format war. But here's what's fascinating. This failure taught Sony a lesson they'd never forget. Technology alone doesn't win. Ecosystems do. While Betamax was struggling, Sony launched something that would redefine personal entertainment, the Walkman, in 1979. The idea was controversial internally: a tape player that couldn't record, that only played music. Engineers thought it was stupid. But Sony's leadership insisted. They wanted portable music for travel. The Walkman became a cultural phenomenon, over 200 million units sold. It changed how humans experienced music, making it portable and personal for the first time. Sony had proven they understood something deeper. People don't buy technology, they buy experiences. In 1988, Sony and Nintendo partnered to develop a CD-ROM add-on for the Super Nintendo. Sony would handle the hardware, Nintendo the games. At the 1991 Consumer Electronics Show, Sony announced the PlayStation, a hybrid console that played both Nintendo cartridges and Sony CD-discs. The very next day, Nintendo publicly announced they were partnering with Philips instead. They betrayed Sony on the world stage. Sony's engineers were humiliated, but they refused to quit. They convinced leadership, we should make our own console. Most executives thought it was suicide. Nintendo and Sega owned gaming. Why would Sony, with no game development experience, succeed? But remember the Betamax lesson. This time, Sony would build an ecosystem. The original PlayStation launched in Japan in December 1994, priced at 37,000 yen, significantly cheaper than competitors. Sony made bold moves. They used CD-discs instead of cartridges, making games cheaper to produce. They courted third-party developers aggressively, offering better royalty rates than Nintendo. They marketed to adults, not kids, with edgy, mature advertising. Games like Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, and Resident Evil became system sellers. By 2000, PlayStation had sold over 100 million units. Sony had dethroned Nintendo. In 2000, Sony launched the PlayStation 2. It played DVD discs, making it a 2-for-1 purchase at $299. It became the best-selling console in history, 155 million units. The PS2 wasn't just a gaming device, it was a multimedia hub. Sony had learned their lesson from Betamax: create value beyond the core product. The PS3 launched in 2006 at $599, too expensive. Xbox 360 dominated early, but Sony persisted with exclusive titles and eventually turned it around. The PS4, launched in 2013, was a masterclass, developer-friendly, gamer-focused, reasonably priced. Over 117 million units sold. Now the PS5 continues that legacy despite supply chain challenges. From burned rice to billion-dollar gaming empire, Sony's journey teaches us that failure isn't fatal. They failed at rice cookers, lost Betamax, stumbled with PS3, but they learned, adapted, and innovated relentlessly. Today, PlayStation Network has over 100 million subscribers. The gaming division generates over $25 billion annually. Not bad for a company that started by burning rice. Sony's story proves that dominance isn't about one brilliant product, it's about understanding ecosystems, learning from failure, and never stopping innovation. From transistor radios to Walkmans to PlayStations, Sony didn't just create products, they created cultures. And that's how you go from rice cookers to gaming royalty.